Thank you. The clerk will now proceed to read the orders of the day.
Item 1, the Sedition Repeal Bill, second reading.
Minister for Home Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that the bill be now read a second time. This bill repeals the Sedition Act and makes related amendments to other legislations. The crime of sedition has its origins in English common law, and it was originally designed to protect the monarchy and the British government from civil unrest and dissent among its own people. Sedition laws were first introduced in Singapore through the Sedition Ordinance of 1938, when Singapore was a British colony. The Sedition Act in its current form has its roots in the Sedition Ordinance of 1948, which was introduced by the British to the Federation of Malaya in 1948, in part to curb local opposition to the British colonial rule. The Act criminalizes conduct with seditious tendencies, and those tendencies are defined in Section 3 of the Act as including bringing into hatred or contempt or exciting disaffection against the government, exciting citizens or residents to attempt to change in unlawful ways any matter legally established, bringing into hatred or contempt or the exciting or disaffection against the administration of justice in Singapore, raising discontent or disaffection amongst the citizens of Singapore or residents in Singapore, and promoting feelings of ill will and hostility between different races or classes of the population in Singapore. Some aspects, in fact, some of the key aspects of the Sedition Act are no longer relevant and have not been relevant for a long time. And those provisions have not been used for prosecutions. Those provisions which remain the law up to today have not been used for a long time. For instance, the excitement or disaffection against the government shouldn't be criminalized. I think if it is, a lot of people, including many in this House, would be considered criminals. But it hasn't been done away with sooner because some of the other provisions were relevant. But over time, various other laws have come into place which were originally covered by the Sedition Act, including conduct that impugns the impartiality of judges or undermines public confidence in the administration of justice in Singapore, have always been dealt with under the common law of contempt, but now there is the Administration of Justice Act. Inciting violence with the objective of effecting change to the policies in Singapore now, as for some time, find place in other legislation, or ill will or hostility between groups of people in Singapore. But one aspect which is not in any other legislation, which remains relevant and hasn't been dealt with therefore, is conduct that promotes feelings of ill will and hostility between different groups in the population, not just along racial or religious lines, but other lines as well. So racial, religious lines are already covered, but other classes of the population are not covered. So we'll be making related amendments as we delete this, repeal the Sedition Act. We'll be making related amendments to the Penal Code and the Criminal Procedure Code to ensure that that aspect, to safeguard social cohesion in Singapore, is maintained. So let me just touch on the amendments to the Penal Code. We now have laws that deal with conduct that threatens racial religious harmony, as I said. They include sections 298 and 298A of the Penal Code, as well as, of course, the Maintenance of Religious Harmony Act. Beyond racial and religious harmony, we must also continue to safeguard social cohesion between other groups of the population. They could be organized along the lines of language, socioeconomic status, other groups. So the bill therefore amends Section 267C of the Penal Code to cover this. And Section 267C today only covers the use of documents or electronic records. It will be amended to cover speeches and other forms of communication because they are equally relevant. And the bill raises the threshold of Section 267C by requiring proof of a mental fault element. So the person must have intended for the violence or disobedience to the law or breach of the peace to occur, or knew or had reason to believe that these were likely to occur as a result of his words or actions. So compared to Section 3(1)(e) of the Sedition Act, the offense threshold for the amended Section 267C will be higher. The bill also amends Section 267C to define the phrase counseling disobedience to the law as providing instruction, advice, or information that promotes disobedience to the law. The amendment is intended to provide greater clarity on the scope of the offense and its application. Next, I'll touch on the amendments to the Criminal Procedure Code. The offenses currently under the Sedition Act are arrestable, and it allows the police to move quickly. Once the Sedition Act is repealed, to ensure that the police can continue to be effective in investigations, where particularly social cohesion is concerned, we propose to amend the CPC to make the following offenses arrestable. Section 298 of the Penal Code, which criminalizes the deliberate wounding of any person's racial or religious feelings, and 298A of the Penal Code, which criminalizes the promotion of disharmony between different racial or religious feelings. And Section 505 of the Penal Code, which criminalizes, amongst other behavior, the making, publication, circulation of material with the intent to incite any group of persons to commit an offense against another group of persons. And 267C is already an arrestable offense. No amendment is needed in this regard. So in conclusion with that, I beg to move. Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Madam.